Pô, tem isso aí também. Quanto vai quanto paga?
Eu usei 3.200 da empresa.
3.200.
Aí eu só paguei quase $2.000.
Pô, eu não sabia que cobria coisa estética também.
Eu parei. É um pouco estético, mas você pode colocar pintura também.
Ano que vem eu vou te perguntar de novo sobre mais detalhes. Qual que eu tenho Sublime?
O meu estúdio em casa. Aí,
tá.
$1.800 por ano pra gastar. Com coisas de...
Não, sim, é o Real Spending Account pode dar qualquer coisa, mas o Sublime eu não sei se vai comer.
Deixa eu ver se eu ano passado foi o que eu vou
Esse cara que me dá silenciosa, que vergonha. E daí? Não, olha. Você sabia que era jogo de nada, não tava bem.
Carol, eu vou, antes de fazer a oração final, peço de novo.
Agora a gente vai comer.
Por enquanto, tá certo, não precisa fazer nada.
A gente pode deixar reservado, né?
Eu tô com
vai visitando, né? Tem várias na cidade.
A gente tem que ter quem vai ligar pra gente primeiro.
Que foi?
Primeiro tinha.
Tem a PetSmart. PetSmart sempre tem doação.
Okay. Well, hi. Hello. Bom dia. Thank you for coming in such a wonderful day outside. It's quite the journey to get here, but I'm glad to see you all, and I'm sure more people will come as time goes. I wanted to remind everyone of our Christmas special event, which is happening in 2 weeks. So December 8th, we won't be here. We will not be here. We'll be at this location called the Shriners of Southern Alberta, which is on in the northwest. It's kind of across Bonus Park, on the other side of the river there. So we wait for everyone there, and it starts at 11? 11? Yeah, okay. And it goes till 3, I think, right?
It doesn't have a time to end, actually.
Oh, well, there you
We
go.
have the full
So,
day.
we have the full day, so yeah, it will be great to see you all there. And we'll have a talk, but it'll be more of a, you can call it like a group study or a group reflection, and then we'll have some lunch and some time to enjoy together. So to start off today, we'll be reading a book called The Living Spring by Chico Xavier through the mediumship, through the Spirit Emmanuel. And this is a book where Chico Xavier, or Emmanuel, takes passages from the Gospel of Jesus and gives us some interpretations. And today we're going to read chapter 30, which talks about education. And Emmanuel brings a passage from Paul in the first letter to the Corinthians when Paul said, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit lives in you?" So then he brings us the interpretation saying that inside the tiny seeds lives the blueprint of the whole tree. In the heart of the soil are melodies of the spring, and blocks of stone are the masterpieces of statuary. Nonetheless, the orchard needs constant care. The crystal clear springs needs an aqueduct, so that it may run without becoming contaminated. The sculptured stone requires the work of the chisel. Similarly, the Spirit harbors the gene of divinity. God is in us as much as we are in God. However, so that the divine light may shine forth from human darkness, it is necessary for the educational process of life to work in us on the stony pathway of the millennium. Only the heart, ennobled in great understanding, can pour forth a sanctifying heroism. Only the educated mind can produce illuminated forms of thought. Only spiritual greatness can produce a soothing voice to speak balanced and sublime words. Let us understand pain and toil as the heavenly artists of our spiritual purification. Educate, and you will transform rationality into intelligence, intelligence into humanity, and humanity into angelhood. Educate, and you will build heaven on earth. Since we know that the Lord dwells in us, let us improve our lives so that we may reflect Him. So let us do a quick prayer. We're closing our eyes. Taking a deep breath. Arriving on this chair. Elevating our thoughts to our Master Jesus. Attuning to His energy, to His love, to His kindness, to our guardian angels. We're there exclusively for us. To the mentors of our FSS. So many who love us. May we find comfort in this energy and this love, so that we can open our hearts and learn from Him. Feeling His gentleness, His support, His comfort. We ask You, Master, that You help us today as we go through our conversation. And in it, may we find some words, some feelings that can touch us, and that can have a meaning in our lives. May Your love surround us and comfort us today and tomorrow. So be it. So today, hey, how are you? Good morning. Great. I don't know if all of you know Sonia. She's in the room next door with the kids, but she was the one who asked me to give this talk again. We talked about this about 2 years ago exactly, actually, and then she asked me to talk about it again. So hopefully I invite you all to help us here as we talk about our sublime friend. And it's a bit of a, we call it a bit of a mystery. I won't reveal who the sublime friend is until we're a few slides in. But who do you think, you guys? Who do you think I'm going to be talking about? Who do you think our sublime friend is? Who could it be?
The Holy Spirit?
A friend of ours, the Holy Spirit. It could be the Holy Spirit, yeah.
Jesus.
Could be Jesus, yeah.
God.
Could be God, yeah. Isn't that actually wonderful? Like, we have so many examples of beings and things that could be our sublime friend. And The talk today is based solely on a talk given by Artur Valadares, who is a Spiritist from Brazil, from São Carlos in São Paulo. And he's a really good Spiritist expose, and he did a talk called Our Sublime Friend, so this is mostly from him. And so to talk about the Sublime Friend, this is based on a book called Alvorada Cristã, or Christian Dawn, and it's by the spirit Nero, which was one of the spirits that have, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, has written some books. Alvorada Cristã is one of them, or Christian Dawn. The other one that's one of his most famous ones is called Jesus at Home. Jesus at Home. Jesus no Lar, yeah. That's another famous one that he's written. So we'll read this text that talks about this Sublime Friend, and he's going to describe us, the Sublime Friend, and then at the very end he's going to tell us who this is. So he says that this Sublime Friend, it's always a Sublime Friend to us. He says some characteristics. The Sublime Friend educate us without hurting us. So it's something that it's a friend of ours that we can use that help us educate ourselves, but it doesn't hurt us. It also provides entertainment. It can entertain us, and it can help build our character. It also reveals the past to us, so it tells us about the past, and also helps us prepare for the future. It repeats to us what Socrates taught in the squares of Athens. It also tells us what Moses, the great lawgiver, accomplished. It reminds us of the words of Plato and Aristotle. So it tells us a lot of stories that happened in the past. And he says that together with him we learn how much our ancestors suffered in achieving the well-being that we enjoy today. So in this sentence here, we can take a little bit of a tangent and start thinking about the respect that we pay, or the gratitude or the honor that we pay to the ancestors of ours who came before us and who worked so hard for us to be able to enjoy the life that we have today. And this is not a new topic, if you will, because if we go back to when the Old Testament started out with the Ten Commandments from Moses, in one of those 10 Commandments there is one that talks about honoring. Anyone remember what that one is?
Honoring father and mother.
There you go. Exactly. So that one, back, thousands and thousands of years ago, this idea of honoring who came before us was already there, right? It was already taught us. And Emmanuel, in the book Our Daily Bread, which is the fourth one there, he tells us a little bit about this. He says that honoring our father and mother, and here, talking about father and mother regarding anyone who helped shaped our moral, helped shaped our lives, not necessarily our birth, father and mother. In this idea of honoring them, one of the ways that Emmanuel helps us understand what it means to honor, he says that it's applying all the resources that they gave to us into our lives. That's a great way of honoring the past, so that we can build upon everything that they taught us, and we can utilize all those teachings in our lives so we can build upon it and grow. So this was a bit of a tangent on this, on how this Sublime Friend also helps us to learn about the past. He says it also describes to us the futility of wars, born of hatred that devastated the world. So he tells us a story, the good and the bad. It also advises us on sowing of tranquility and joy. It helps us in understanding ourselves and understanding our neighbors. So as we're interacting with this friend of ours, it helps us understand about ourselves, helps us see a little bit of ourselves a little bit clearer, but also it helps us understand our neighbors, it helps us understand those around us. It also can give us courage for work and humility on the path of experience. So it's a pretty well-versed friend, as you can see. It can help us in so many different ways. Without this friend, we would lose the most beautiful news from our grandparents, and life's work would not achieve the necessary meaning. So it's starting to describe how this friend helps bring a link between our grandparents and the ones before to us here today. We would pass without it. We would pass on earth in complete ignorance of each other. Hey, welcome. And the precious lesson of the older man would not reach the ears of the younger ones. So this is a very interesting passage because it talks about how this sublime friend carries the lessons from the older and helps the younger learn from them. We're talking about a sublime friend here, and we haven't said who the sublime friend is, and now we're just giving some characteristics of who this sublime friend is. They say religion and science would probably not come into the light of reality. The highest ideals of the human spirit would die without echo. Industry, commerce, and navigation would have no footholds. So it's not only something that talks about the past, but it's also something that's necessary today. And it is the link or the union between those who teach and learn, between the millennia that are gone and the day we live in now. So again, it provides that link between the past and the present, and it helps us with building our future. It is also this blessed friend that we owe the collection of news and teachings of Jesus, which renew the earth for the divine kingdom. And so it is because of this sublime friend that we know what Jesus came to teach us. It is because of the sublime friend that we know Jesus' words. Any idea?
Reincarnation?
Spiritism.
Torso.
All good.
Come on, Vito.
All good. It's
Come
funny
on.
because it's actually, people are usually disappointed when they hear this. But so now towards the end of the text, right, they say that this unforgettable benefactor, or the sublime friend, is the edifying book. So for this reason, let us not forget that every book dedicated to goodness and an enlightened companion of life, deserving universal esteem and respect. So this sublime friend is the book. That's why I put a bunch of books in front of us here. To really make us think a little bit more about all the wealth of knowledge that it has brought to our lives, but not only to our lives, but to bring humanity where it is today. Right? When we think about this is the link between the past and the present, it's through these that we learn from the knowledge that was collected in the past, and we can build upon it and then grow. And there's a few other things that we're going to talk about today. And we will bring a few stories too from some of these books that reflect, I guess, the importance of Jesus in our lives until today. And again, I said this talk was based on a talk by Artur Valadares, and he brings a bit of a reflection about books, which is from a priest that went to Brazil as a missionary. I think he was a Portuguese priest that went to Brazil. His name was Antonio Vieira. And he described, this was in the 17th century, I believe, and he said that a book is a world that speaks, so it contains a lot of knowledge from the past, from the world. It's a deaf that answers, So a lot of times when we have questions in our minds, questions about our lives, some of those questions, or actually some of the answers to those questions, might be in these books, or in those books in the library, or in other books that we have read in the past. But it has our answers, but it never judges us, right? We can go and look for answers, but it'll never judge us. It's simply there to help us. And it also says it's a blind that guides. So it's someone that provides some guidance to us, but not only does it give advice, but it doesn't expect anything back. Right? Sometimes when we get advice from our friends and then we don't do what they advised, then they come back and say, I told you so. The book will never say, I told you so. The book is something that provides guidance without judgment. And it's a dad who lives, right? Through us, as we learn from them and apply the things that they have taught us, this is how we are bringing those books to life. This is how we're bringing that story to life. So that's a bit of a reflection about book. And so Nina, she loves books. That's why she asked me to give a talk about it. And if we were to think, about the Spiritist doctrine, we have 5 books over there, starting from the Spirit's book, then the Medium's book, then the Gospel according to Spiritism, then Heaven and Hell, and then the Genesis. So here is the 5 major books from Spiritism, starting with the first one, right? The Spirit's book, which describes the philosophical let's say leg or pillar of Spiritism, where you have questions and answers about the study of life. It's more of a philosophy that's one of the main pillars of Spiritism. Then you have the Medium's book, which now it goes on to more of the scientific aspect of Spiritism. It was through observation of experiments that Kardec did that he was able to understand and get to know more and discover more about the spiritual world. So this book talks more on the scientific part of Spiritism, about the interactions between the spiritual and the material world, how it happens, why it happens. Then you have the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the 3rd pillar of Spiritism. This is the one that brings religion, and this is the one that takes the Gospel from Christ and interprets it through the lenses of Spiritism. And it teaches us a lot, and it gives us interpretations that until then we didn't have. So these are the 3 ones, the 3 pillars of Spiritism: science, religion, and philosophy. And then you have Heaven and Hell, which has a lot from the Medium's book and the Spirit's book, because it brings a lot of letters from Spirit describing their lives in the past. So it comes with a lot of experience from our spirits. And then you have the Genesis. The Genesis kind of encompasses them all, because it talks a lot about science. It talks also a lot about the spiritual world. It talks about God. And it helps also interpret the Gospel. It talks about miracles. How do we interpret miracles? And so on and so forth. So there's a vast amount of learning that we can take from those. And now this brings us to a story that happened between Peter and Jesus. And this is where we're going to tell a little bit of it's storytelling time. And it comes from a book called Contos desta e de outra vida. So tales from this and a previous life, from Chico Xavier. And in this passage, this book, for those of you who know a man called Humberto de Campos, who was a journalist in Brazil many years ago, and he wrote this book through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. And here he's describing a story that happened between Peter and Jesus. So this was after Jesus had already died, so Jesus had passed on, and Peter had created one of the first churches one of the first Christian churches, and he was a little lost, right? He wasn't really sure how to take it from there, because now Christ wasn't there anymore to help him, to guide him. So he wasn't sure about what to do, how to behave. So then one night he was praying very, very profoundly, and then Jesus appeared to him, and then Peter asked, "Master, please help me, guide me, because I don't know what to do, where to go, who to help." And then Jesus said, "Tomorrow I will give you this guidance." So then Peter slept. Came the next morning, and then he was having breakfast, and then he heard someone slamming the door open of the church and coming in. And when he looked at that person, he immediately recognized that as the main thief, the main criminal of the town that they were living in. And he came into the church because there were people that were chasing him, so he needed to find some shelter. So he begged Peter to let him stay inside the church for some shelter and to hide. And then Peter, for those of you who know a bit about Peter, he was very short-tempered and very direct and very strict. So he said, "No, you don't belong here. You're a criminal. You're a thief. Go out." So he denied that person. And then on the same day, right after that, a perfume, a very strong scent of flowery perfume came in to the church. He looked again, and then there was a sick woman that was coming in asking for help, asking for medicine. And he recognized her as being a woman, I can't remember what they describe as. It was a woman of, what was the word they used? I forget now. But it was an adulterous woman who would sell herself in the square. And so he looked at that woman and said, "You don't belong here. How dare you come into the house of Christ when you do that?" And then he sent her out again. You go back to the square where you belong. And then towards the end of the day, another person came knocking on the door really hard of the church. He opened it. As he opened the door, a man fell into the church and started to even puke there. He was the town drunkard, or the town drunk. And then again, Peter looked at him and said, "How dare you come into the house of Christ drunk? Right? You go out and go back to where you came from, because you don't belong here." So we had these three experiences, and then it was time to go to bed again. And then Peter was still unsure about what happened, what to do. And again, he got himself into a deep prayer, asking for Christ to help him, to give him guidance. And then Jesus came to him and said, "Well, Peter," and Peter said, "Master, you told me that you were going to show me your guidance today, and I didn't see anything. How come you lied to me?" And Jesus said, "Peter, I came to you 3 times, and you denied me those 3 times. You're asking me what to do, how to behave. Well, those 3 people that came knocking on your door, those were the opportunities that I had given you to show some love, to show some compassion, everything that I had taught you before. And you completely denied it. You completely didn't see it." And then Peter was ashamed. He felt really ashamed for what he had done. And he said, "Have compassion with me, and help me with your guidance." And then Jesus said, "Peter, when you want to hear me, remember that the gospel has my word." So I'm bringing this passage because it talks about a book. It talks about the gospel, right? So the moment that we want to hear from Jesus, the moment we want to talk to Jesus, we can open the gospel and talk to him, because that's where his words are. And we might say that perhaps the gospel is a little tough to understand. It has some different words that it might be hard for us to interpret. That's okay, because the third book from Kardec there, the Gospel according to Spiritism, takes passages from the Gospel. Each chapter is a passage of the Gospel, and it gives a whole interpretation about a small little paragraph. So if you have a hard time reading the Gospel and understanding the words of Christ, that book can help us a lot in that interpretation. Kardec's words is from 150, 60 years ago. So if that is still a little hard, we have this collection. It's called the Living Spring Collection by Sheikh Shafiat, right, which was the book that I read in the beginning. And there are 5 books in this collection. We have them all here. And this one, it doesn't take a full chapter from the Gospel. It takes one sentence from the Gospel and that it interprets it. So it can help us again understand a little bit more about Jesus' words. So again, it's how, opening a book, opening the words of Christ can be this conversation that we're creating with Christ. And this is my first time using AI to generate images. This is an image generator.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, it was. I prompted to a conversation with Jesus at home. Even gave Jesus a little tea. So, yeah.
Good job.
It was pretty cool actually. And now, this book here, Thought and Life, which is the favorite book from Louise, who's also with the kids today. In chapter 4, Emmanuel talks about instruction, and this is the whole reason why actually Sonia asked me to give this talk again, because it tells us something very important about books that we might have not known before. It says that the book is the dynamo of creative energy. So a dynamo is it's that mechanical device that basically converts movement into light. So they're saying that the book can be this for someone. It can help someone learn, but also not only learn, but also apply that to their lives, to basically take these words, take this knowledge and bring light into it by motivating someone to actually action, to do things based on what they've learned. And then this is what Sonia really liked when he said, we find the most advanced services of telementation. I hadn't heard this word before, and telementation simply means, make sure I'm getting it right, it means the transmission of ideas from one mind to the other. So if we were to explore this a little bit more, every time we're opening a book, for example, from Emmanuel, and we're reading from him, it's like his ideas from his mind is coming to ours. Mm-hmm. That is to say that as we're opening, as we're reading it, we are connecting our own energy, our own thoughts with Emmanuel's. So we're attuning our energy with his. It's almost like we're having a conversation. The same goes with the gospel, for example. When we open it, we could be, if we allow ourselves, to be connecting with Christ. The books from Kardec, right? If we're reading the things that he wrote, we could be, if we allow, to be tuning our minds, tuning our energy, tuning ourselves with the energy of Kardec. Right? That's the power that a book can have. It can bring us together with the spirits who wrote them, or when they were alive. And they say, because at the immense distances in time, in space and time, we incorporate the ideas of the superior spirits that passed through our world centuries ago. So the book removes any barriers of space and time, and allows us to be in that connection with the spirit that, maybe was here 150 years ago, maybe it was here 2,000 years ago. So the book removes all that space, a barrier of space and time, and allows us to be closer to them, to be together with them. So it's a beautiful thought and idea and understanding. And then hopefully maybe next time we're opening a book from Emmanuel or whatever it is or whoever it may be, right? That we take a second or a moment to realize that we could be in connection with those spirits, with those superior spirits that have written those books, and even with Shikshavya himself. And the whole purpose, right, of this, they end this text by saying to know is to sponsor the liberation of ourselves, placing ourselves in the way of new horizons in life. So why read? Right? Why learn? They're saying that to know, to learn, to understand is to sponsor or is to fuel our own liberation of ourselves, placing ourselves in a new way, in a new horizon in our lives. So learning, how can I say, changing or removing our ignorance or lack of knowledge with knowledge can help us free ourselves. And this is a passage from Emmanuel, but Jesus had already told this to us almost 2,000 years ago in John chapter 8 when he says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," right? One of his famous quotes, already telling us that knowing, understanding will help us set ourselves free. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it could set us free? Or why do you think ignorance might pull us back? Any thoughts?
To learn,
To learn?
open your mind to new ideas and things that maybe you didn't understand before reading that book.
It could be, yeah, exactly. I hadn't thought about asking this question, just came to me now. And one of the things that, one of the reflections that we make here is the fact that when we know basically the best way to behave or the best way to do something, and we do it that way, we're freeing ourselves because we won't suffer any consequences from it because we got it right. Now, sometimes when you do something and it goes the wrong way, right? We did something that we shouldn't have done. We know that we'll have to learn later on how to do it right, right? So in a way, we're having that consequence come to us later on. So that's the aspect of not being free yet, because we still have that consequence that's coming. We still have that learning piece that will eventually come. Whereas if we learn it now, and if we do it now, the loving way, we won't have a consequence to go through later in life. So it literally sets us free.
And I guess it sets you free too, because if you're learning, if you're understanding the purpose of life, then you can see the situations you'll go through in a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then you can deal with those situations, those the pain you have when you lose someone, or because you go through, I don't know, if you were laid off, or if something happened, you can deal with that in a different perspective, where you ask yourself, why I'm going through this? Why is this happening to me? So when you know that, it sets you free, because your life can be a little, like, the burden is not going to
It's lighter.
anymore. It's going to be lighter. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. Exactly. The whole idea of rebelling against something that happened in our lives that we didn't really like goes away, right? You're not rebelling anymore.
It set us free from the slavery of the scene, when we allow ourselves to have that guidance.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of times we know where to find it, but we don't allow ourselves.
Yes.
And I think that reflects on the reading of those three people as well. Like those three people that tried to enter the church and they didn't have any guidance, so they are suffering because of the slavery of the scene. And yeah, knowledge could set them free.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Using the examples, exactly. And Kardec, actually not Kardec himself, but in the Gospel According to Spiritism, have a passage. Anyone remember this passage is from, if you've seen it before. It's a famous Spiritist passage that talks about the teachings to us. It says, Spiritists, love one another. This is the first teaching. Educate yourselves. This is the second. Someone told us, and it was not Kardec. It was not...
I was going to say the spirit of truth.
Yes, there you go. Well done. Exactly. This is the chapter where we have a lot of text from the Spirit of Truth, which, as we know, is Jesus himself. And so again, this was us. This was him telling us to love ourselves and also to educate ourselves, to instruct ourselves. And this is, again, where we talk more about the importance of learning, the importance of transforming our ignorance. So much so that in the book, it's called Correio Fraterno, or Fraternal Mail, Emmanuel brings this idea or this reflection to us that education, in short, is light that victoriously circulates from feeling to reasoning, sustaining the balance between the brain and the heart. So this is, it's through education, it's through learning, making sense of that learning and applying it into in our lives. It's what will sustain the balance between the brain and the heart, right? Usually, as we're still imperfect spirits, improving ourselves, we usually have those unbalanced. We're either too rational or too emotional. So the education will help us bring those into balance, to understand that they both exist. They're both just as important, and as a result, they need to be in balance within themselves. And I wanted to bring something that is real quick, talking about Spiritism here, that we usually talk about in Spiritist centers, this, and we actually see this in the books from André Luiz. And a lot of us, we might think that, we're not mediums because we can't see spirit or because we can't hear spirits. So we can't really communicate with spirits. They can't really help us if we're not mediums. Well, the book is actually a great tool. It's a great vehicle that spirits use to talk to us. And the saying that we have in Spiritist centers is, whenever we have a book, especially in the Gospel at Home, or if you're opening a book at random, is that your guardian angels is usually there, influencing you to open on that page. So much so that a lot of times when we're reading books, especially these ones that are short, just one-pagers of text, sometimes you open that book and you read something that was exactly what you needed to hear at that time. It wasn't a random choice, it wasn't by chance, right? But it was likely your spirit guide helping you and influencing you to open right on that page. So it can be a vehicle for spirits to help us, especially if you don't communicate with them. And sometimes, you open that text one week, and then the next week you open the exact same text, and then the third week you open on the exact same text. Like, this book is broken. What's happened? Right? What happened here? And that's not the case. It's because the lesson, we still didn't get it, right? It still hasn't clicked, right? So we need to read that again, because there is something for us there that we're missing, right? So that was the idea of how books can also be a vehicle for spirits to help us. So another story time again, and this is in the book Paul and Stephen, right there, which is my favorite book. It's my favorite Spiritist book. I believe it's the favorite of a lot of people too. It has, I know of people who have changed their lives because of this book. It kind of opened their eyes a lot to learning about the spiritual world, to learning about reincarnation and the power of forgiveness. And in this book, Paul, he at one point he decides to, get a friend and then go out in the world to start to broadcast the teachings of Christ. And his first trip, right? It's through the Galatians, which is kind of like where Turkey is today. And he was going towards a place called Antiochia. And in that moment, in that journey, it was nighttime, and he had built a bit of a fire, and it was Paul and Barnabas. Those two were traveling together. And then they had just had a really simple supper, and then it was time for them to talk about Christ, because that's what they did at night. They would gather, just the two of them at that time, and talk a little bit about the gospel, about what they had learned from Christ. And they were really exalted. They were really excited. They were talking about, this prince that had come, this prince that had shown the map to the treasure. They're referring to the gospel as this map of treasure, and then this prince, which was Christ, had come to give them a treasure. And then some thieves were walking by and overheard them talking about them having a map of a treasure, that a prince had come and had a hidden treasure. And so the thieves came and stole things from them and asked, so where is this treasure map that you're talking about, because we want it. And then Paul, instead of rebelling against them, said, the treasure map is right there. He pointed to the gospel and he said, once you find that treasure, you will need nothing else. You will need nothing else. That treasure is all that you need. Right, so then they took the gospel and they took a bunch of their material things that they had. And Barnaby, especially, he was pretty disappointed, because now they had nothing else. Right? And then Paul was trying to comfort him. He said, we don't have food anymore, but we can find some fruit along the way. We have no more money, but the next town we can find a job and we can get some money. Barnaby, he said, but I'm really sad about the gospel, because we don't have the gospel anymore. And then Paul reached inside of his shirt, where he kept another copy of the gospel, and he pulled it out and showed it to him. And that copy of the gospel was a copy that Peter had given to Paul, because that copy was the one that Stephen used in the past and gave to him. And if you've read the book Paul and Stephen, that has a huge meaning. Stephen was a person that Paul came to hate. Then he finally came to appreciate and came to love him very deeply. So it meant a lot to Paul to have the copy of Stephen. And this was me trying to sum up 300 pages of the book. But trust me, the relationship between Stephen and Paul is very deep, and I highly recommend the book. And so, in that moment, when Paul pulled the copy of the gospel, Barnaby got super excited, and they were really excited because they had, again, the gospel in their hands. And the point of reflection here is the fact that they had absolutely nothing else. Right? They were in the middle of the jungle, not a jungle, but in the middle of nowhere in Turkey. And they had no food, had no money, barely any clothing, and they were happy. They were joyful. They were excited because they had the gospel, because they knew the value of it. They knew that in there they had the treasure map to find something, to find this treasure that once you find it, you realize that you really don't need anything else. So in that moment was a very powerful moment, because it taught us, it showed us the power of that book, the power of that a story can have. And we have so many of them at our disposal, right? It's up to us to pick it up. This is actually another beautiful thing about a book, is that it will do nothing for you if you don't choose to pick it up and to open it. It won't come to you, open for you, and then say, read this. No, it requires you it requires us to stand up and choose to open it and choose to learn from it. And sometimes, when you open a book and you fall asleep immediately, you can stand up and read walking. If you say, still, I don't like it. Nowadays you can listen to books, right? You can have that as well. So the knowledge is there for us to take it. I love this quote by a poet called Rumi. He's a Persian poet from the 13th century. And I think it speaks to a little bit of what Paul and Barnaby was talking about. He said that, Rumi says that, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. And the link to what Paul did here was that in the moment that he was being robbed, he could have fought back and tried to teach the thieves a lesson. But he realized, right, as wise as a man that he was, that the purpose, the sole purpose of our lives is to truly change ourselves for the better. And that moment influenced and motivated Barnaby to change himself as well. So, a couple last slides. Question, and it's a rhetorical question, but it's just a point of reflection. What is the book that we are writing? What is the book that we are writing? Not with words on a piece of paper, more so with our feelings, with our actions that we're writing on our paths, on our journeys. Simply a reflection for us to leave here with. Is what, if we were to look back, what does our book say until now? And then how do we want our books to look like in 10, 20, 30 years from now? And how will that change what I'm doing today? And hopefully our books can represent some of the learnings that we've had from those who inspire us. Jesus, Emmanuel, Shiku, could be anyone that inspires us to be better. So hopefully, even though imperfect as we are, hopefully our books will still have some virtues being showcased there. And to end, I wanted to bring a passage, which is the passage that we read in the very beginning. It's a passage from Paul, and he writes in the first letter to the Corinthians. And it's a beautiful passage that I find. And I put it in Portuguese as well, because sometimes it touches people differently in Portuguese. But it's when Paul said, "Do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you?" So we still have a few more minutes. So if you want, you can close your eyes and I'll read it again. But I really wanted you to basically not only listen or hear these words, but see if you can, at least listen and feel those words in your heart. When Paul, out of experience, is saying that you are the temple of God, and then the Spirit of God lives in you. Sometimes we go out there looking for things, remembering that the Spirit of God already lives in us. All those virtuous behaviors that Christ showed us, we have them all within us as potentials, as seeds that need some watering, but recognizing that they are already within us. And in Portuguese, if it sounds better, sois o templo de Deus e que o Espírito de Deus habita em vós. O Espírito de Deus já está em nós. It's a very humbling and motivating passage to realize that, God created us. We are part of God. And as a result, He already lives within us as a potential. And that's what I find beautiful from Spiritism, because it brought Jesus as our brother, not as God. Spiritism clarifies the idea that Jesus is our brother. And there's something really powerful there, because it shows us two main things. When we hear that Jesus came to save us, a few reasons that we say this is, one is because He came to show us what it is to love. He came to show us how to be patient, how to love, how to be kind, how to be virtuous, basically. And then not only did He come to show us that, but the second piece, and this comes with Spiritism, when we think of Jesus as a brother who started just like we did, it brings us the hope. It brings us the knowing that it's possible to become what He is. Right? He's not a God that's something unachievable to us, but He's our brother who started just like we did, much before us. But still, He brings us not only the example of how to do it, but also the motivation, the certainty that we will get there, that we will be able to develop everything that He did. And He actually told us this when, I think it was a passage in John, when He said, you can do all that I do and more, right? So He already told us that we can have all those virtues that He had and display to us.
Peter.
Yes.
And who said that quote? Was it Jesus?
No, this was Paul. This was in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, I think, talking about this. Yeah. And Paul has some beautiful passages, especially what we like about Paul is the fact that he's not speaking out of his mind, but he's speaking out of experience, because he was one that didn't live with Christ, right? Didn't know Christ that way, but went on to broadcast and to bring the gospel to so many different regions of the world, and he had a lived experience of suffering, of pain, having to go through a lot of things, and then when he brings these things, it's like he's speaking out of experience, he's speaking out of truth. Right? One of the beautiful ones too is when he says to the Galatians that it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Right? So again, another representation of this one. And it's actually, if you look at the New Testament, the biggest chunk is from Paul, not from the other apostles, right? So, and if you like Paul and Stephen, couldn't recommend more. It's an amazing journey to read that book. It's the story of Paul, but it has some things before him as well. And that brings us to the end. I don't know. Oh yeah, we have some people that came in later. I just wanted to remind us that we have our Christmas coming up on December 8th, if you're available. So on December 8th, please do not come here. We will not be here. We'll be at Shrines of Southern Alberta. We'll probably put this poster outside, but hopefully you remember. Okay. Carol, can you change the picture?
Yes.
If you open the little picture, you'll see
Yeah.
Jesus is already there. Yeah. Okay. So we can end in a prayer, and then we'll go to our passes over here. So let us close our eyes and elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus, to our guardian angels, to feel the comfort that's available to us, to feel that energy that helps dissolve our worries, that clears our minds to see and to hear the solutions. And as we go deeper to our hearts, we can hear Paul saying to us, "Do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God already lives in you?" Master, we ask that may we feel these words, and in those realizing the opportunity there to love ourselves, to love others, may we find in us the strength to learn, to apply those learnings, so we can be a better versions of ourselves in writing our own books. Thank you for all that you offer us, all that you provide us. And as we get into contact with the Master, help us have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. May you surround us with your love, your guidance, your protection. So be it. Okay, so we'll be going to our passes now. I'm just going to call some people over.